All right, happy Saturday. Welcome into the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Senior. Hope all of you are having a phenomenal weekend. Bringing you another video from home because there's just so much to talk about with this football team. Coming your way on today's show, 49ers, according to reports, have a second-round pick on the table for a Jimmy Garoppolo trade. Should the 49ers target Deshaun Watson? My answer to that is no. And also, I put out a mailbag call on Twitter and YouTube. I'm going to answer all of your 49ers-related questions. Make sure you hit that red subscribe button down below. Free agency basically kicks off on Monday with the tampering period. So as all of these signings come in, we'll be pushing out videos, we'll be going live, and we'll have you up to date with all of the best and latest 49ers news and rumors. I don't know why you'd go to any other YouTube channel. Hit that red subscribe button as we get closer and closer to 60,000 subscribers. So we start off with Jimmy Garoppolo. John Middlekauf, former NFL scout who does a podcast with Guy Haberman, also does another podcast on Colin Cowherd's network called The Volume, said that he's been hearing that the 49ers have a second-round pick on the table for Jimmy Garoppolo. Here's what he said on the podcast. I would say if they got a 3 and a 2, how is that humanly possible? Listen, I got a text yesterday that someone told them, and they're like, I even think that's crazy that there's a 2 on the table. Khalil Mack just got traded for a 2, and I get that quarterbacks are much more important than pass rushers, and there's a supply and demand issue. There's also a draft issue. Props to the Niners if they're able to pull that shit off. If you get a second-round pick, so you acquire him for a second, you got a second, and you got everything in the middle, that would be one of the most incredible transactions I've ever seen, because part of it is I don't think he's worthy of that. Now, all along over the last couple of months, I've looked at the quarterback market, I've looked at previous quarterback trades, and I've said that I think that Garoppolo can get you and net you a second-round pick. Look, Sam Darnold got a second in that trade between the New York Jets and the Carolina Panthers. When Wentz was traded to the Indianapolis Colts from the Philadelphia Eagles, it was basically a 2 that became a 1. Then he got traded to the Washington Commanders for 2 3s. One of those 3s can become a 2. And when you look at the quarterback market right now, yes, Deshaun Watson is available because he is not going to face any legal charges as of now, so that bulks up the market a little bit. But Aaron Rodgers going back to the Green Bay Packers, Russell Wilson got traded to the Denver Broncos, the aforementioned Carson Wentz got traded to the Washington Commanders, so the quarterback market is somewhat thin. And even if Watson gets traded somewhere, and I think it's imminent that that does happen, there are still other quarterback needy teams who are going to be in the market for a quarterback, and some of those teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers, Indianapolis Colts, Carolina Panthers, and New Orleans Saints all have teams that are ready to compete for playoff spots right now, and it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to go to a middle tier option like a Jameis Winston, Jacoby Brissett, Teddy Bridgewater, Marcus Mariota. Those are the quarterbacks available on the free agency market. I like Jameis and some of those other players, but I think Garoppolo is better than some of those backups and fringe starters. I think Garoppolo is a middle tier starter in this league. You look at a team like Indianapolis, they weren't happy with Carson Wentz's leadership skills and him being the face of the franchise. Jimmy Garoppolo is the antithesis. He is the opposite of Carson Wentz. He's beloved by teammates. He's looked at as a great leader. He can be the face of a franchise. He's already done it for one of the most iconic brands in the NFL for San Francisco. He goes to Indianapolis. That's a cakewalk. They're ready to win right now. Pittsburgh has a good defense. They have a good coaching staff. Mike Tomlin, I think, is still criminally underrated. They have weapons on the offensive side of the football at wide receiver, Pat Freiermuth at tight end, Najee Harris at running back. Matt Rule is feeling the heat beneath his seat to win right now. So I do think that Garoppolo can get back a second-round pick. That's been my prediction all along. And if that is the case for San Francisco, that's great. You don't have a first-round pick. You gave that up to move up for Trey Lance. Let's say you net a second-round pick by trading away Jimmy G to one of these destinations. By the way, I think the Las Vegas Raiders are in play because if the Colts trade for Carr, Josh McDaniels has familiarity with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think they'd make a trade for Garoppolo. But the point here being, you get back another 2. That gives you 2 second-round picks, and you have a bevy of options at your disposal to fulfill some needs that you still have on this football team on a roster that just made it to the Final Four, has premier players offensively and defensively, and can compete for a Super Bowl this year. You can address offensive line, you can address cornerback, you can address safety, you can address wide receiver. 2 second-round picks would be an incredible haul for San Francisco. That's been my prediction all along, and if Garoppolo gets traded, we'll be going live right here on the Niners Report and bringing you the latest, so that's another reason why you have to subscribe. Pivot from one quarterback in Jimmy Garoppolo, who's a middle-tier quarterback in my opinion, to one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as a player when he's actually able to play in Deshaun Watson. After Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, I honestly think Deshaun Watson is the third best quarterback in the NFL, slightly ahead of Aaron Rodgers. A lot of people seem to forget just how good Deshaun Watson was in 2020 and in years prior with a bad roster on a chaotic organization that lacked stability for a head coach who really was average in Bill O'Brien and made awful trades by bringing in Laramie Tunsil and giving up a lot to do so, and honestly one of the worst trades of all time by trading away DeAndre Hopkins for a running back? That's awful. 2020, the Texans were a dysfunctional franchise. They had a bad roster. The number one wide receiver for Deshaun Watson was Brandon Cooks. They didn't have a running game. Their offensive line stunk, yet Deshaun Watson threw for nearly 5,000 yards, 4,823 to be specific, 33 touchdowns, and 7 picks. I mean, he has thrown throughout his career in 4 years as a starter, his first year cut short because of that torn ACL, 104 touchdowns to 36 interceptions. He has completed nearly 68% of his passes throughout his career. Average yards per attempt at 8.3, 8.9 in 2020. Makes good decisions with the football, gives you a dual threat option with his ability to complete any throw on the football field, vertically, outside the numbers, inside the hash. He can drive it with some elite arm strength, but also pose a running threat. Deshaun Watson is a special talent, and the grand jury coming to the decision that he's not going to face any charges opens up a vast market of teams to make a Deshaun Watson trade. The 49ers last year, prior to these legal problems surfacing for Deshaun, did check in on Watson, and according to some reports, a trade was close. He runs into these legal issues. They elect to go a different route. They move up for Trey Lance, and they end up getting their future quarterback in Trey at number 3 overall. Now, I've gotten this question from a lot of Niner fans over the last day and change. Should the 49ers make a play for Deshaun Watson? Because he would immediately make the 49ers probably the favorites in the NFC if he's able to play. And Adam Schefter did say he might still face a suspension because of running into these legal problems. And 2, what would the Niners have to give up for Deshaun Watson? The Texans are going to get back more for Watson than what the Seahawks got back for Russell Wilson. Draft capital, and what the Niners would have to give up, Trey Lance, and a combination, I'm not saying all of these players, a combination of Trey Lance, Deebo Samuel, Nick Bosa, and maybe even George Kittle. Again, I'm not saying all of those players, but that is going to be the asking price for the Houston Texans in a trade for Deshaun Watson, because this guy is one of one, and he is one of the special talents that we've ever seen at the quarterback position. And if he's cleared and he can play games, he immediately makes you a contender. Now, you look at what the 49ers can offer. Not as much draft capital, but premier players. You compare that with, let's say, the Philadelphia Eagles. 3 first-round picks this year and some players on top of that. I think other teams have more to offer than the 49ers do. And honestly, if I'm San Francisco, I want to see what Trey Lance can do. Paired up with Kyle Shanahan, throwing to Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, protected by Trent Williams. Nick Bosa is a premier player. Fred Warner is one of the best linebackers in the league. The Niners' defensive line is great. Like, all of the pieces around Trey Lance are there for the Niners to make a deep playoff run. Trey Lance just needs the experience, and from an athletic standpoint, he has as good of an arm, if not better, than Deshaun Watson. He can run like Deshaun Watson, and Kyle Shanahan's one of the best offensive minds in the National Football League. So I do not think that the 49ers should, nor do I think they will, trade for Deshaun Watson. What do you think, though? I'm fascinated to see where this fan base is at on this subject matter. Would you trade for Deshaun Watson? Type T for trade Type P for pass, get those votes in. Do that right now, and I'll start answering these mailbag questions. I put out a mailbag call on Twitter at Chase_Senior. Give me a follow. Always tweet out clips from the show and the latest Niners news and rumors. And I also posted it on the community tab on our YouTube page. So I'll run through these questions. Andrew Naylor with this. Why are some people obsessed with trading away some of the Niners' best players, Trey Lance, George Kittle, etc.? Because they realize that you could bring in a player like Deshaun Watson. Again, I kind of answered that question. I don't think the Niners should, nor do I think they will, trade away premier assets, draft-wise, player-wise, for Deshaun Watson. I think they're pretty content with this roster. If anything, at the quarterback spot, they let Trey sit one more year, continue to develop, and they find a way to bring in Tom Brady to San Francisco. Riddler with this question. Is there any chance Colin Kaepernick gets a job in what is, after all, a quarterback wasteland? Talked about Colin Kaepernick the other day. Tweeted out that clip. He wants to play. Adam Schefter tweeted out something ridiculous that was literally a copy and paste text, it seemed, from Colin Kaepernick's agent. Colin Kaepernick, for a little while, was an awesome quarterback in the NFL with Jim Harbaugh as his head coach. I mean, he helped lead the Niners to the Super Bowl in 2012. He did some special things athletically with a bazooka and a cannon for an arm because he could really put some mustard behind the football and running it. When defenses made adjustments on Colin Kaepernick, he wasn't the same quarterback. He lacked touch throws, which you really need on some of those timing routes and precision routes. And defenses really started to hone in on what he did well, and he never was able to adjust. You combine that with the fact that he got beat out by Blaine Gabbert when Chip Kelly was the head coach. He did get blackballed by the NFL, in my opinion, but also he hasn't played in several years. He's 34 years old, hasn't shown a willingness to want to play in the XFL, for the Alliance of American Football League, or the USFL. And then you have all of the baggage, all of the drama, and all the chaos that follows Kaepernick if he were to be a backup. And you don't want all of that conversation for a backup quarterback and all of that attention on your franchise. So do I think that Colin Kaepernick is capable of being a backup quarterback in the NFL and maybe a spot starter? Yes, especially when I see Andy Dalton and Mike Glennon playing. Do I think there's a chance he gets a job? I'm going to lean no. Big Boz OTW. What do you think about trading Jimmy G for 2/3? Then you send those 2 picks with Fred Warner, Kittle, and Trey to Las Vegas for Derek Carr, Darren Waller, and Max Crosby in a second. Well, Crosby signed that contract extension on Friday, and also that is way, and I mean way too much to give up for Derek Carr, who I think is slightly better than Jimmy Garoppolo, but isn't like overwhelmingly better than Jimmy G. I think the plan, move ahead with Trey Lance. If not, go with Tom Brady. I do think that there's a chance that Carr gets traded, not to San Francisco, maybe to Indianapolis, and maybe Josh McDaniels would like to pair back up with Jimmy G, who is cheaper than Derek Carr. Billy Cummings, my guy from Springfield, Illinois. Where do you think Jimmy G will land? I'm going to go the top 2 options for me. I think it's Pittsburgh. I think it's Indianapolis. Those rosters are built to compete and win right now. They also have good complementary pieces and a good coaching staff around Jimmy G that would lend itself to him being successful and playing well. Those are the top 2 options. Saints 3rd, Carolina 4th. J.R. Swish, who will be wide receiver 3? Some rumors that Jawan Jennings is working on a deal with San Francisco. He's going to be a free agent, was not tendered, so technically he'll be a free agent, but I think the Niners are going to bring him back. He was incredible on the money downs last year, and as a 7th-round pick out of Tennessee, he's exceeded his value already. 49er guy 71, Colin Kaepernick over Nate Sudfeld. Look, this is what I don't understand. Executives around the league saying they think that Nate Sudfeld has starter potential. I covered the Eagles back a couple years ago. He was in that quarterback room when they won the Super Bowl with Carson Wentz and Nick Foles. Really good coaching staff with Peterson, Doug Peterson, Frank Reich, and John DeFilippo. I think that's why Shanahan brought him in. He's a smart quarterback who has some ability, but doesn't have an elite arm, isn't a good athlete at all, is somewhat limited, and in the preseason last year, didn't do anything to blow me away. Can Colin Kaepernick still play after not playing for several years? That's a legitimate question. He's also 34 years old. Rupp Dirt McGirt, do you think Shanny will run Lance into the ground on the first game of the season. I hope not. The design quarterback runs in that first start against Arizona, that was blasphemous. And that's what led to Lance getting that knee injury. Those were designed called quarterback runs. And that's what led to Robert Griffin III getting injured and fizzling out in the NFL. What I liked about Lance in his first 2 starts, the growth that I saw of him not looking to run right away when the pocket broke down. He went through his progressions. He wanted to throw. Last resort, he ran with it. I want to continue to see that development for Trey. Shane Cornwell, last question on Twitter, at Chase_Senior. Who should be the Niners' first priority to re-sign besides Debo and Bosa? Technically, it's not needed to re-sign Debo and Bosa because they have 1 year left on their respective rookie contracts. By the way, what a draft haul, getting franchise pillars in Debo Samuel and Nick Bosa. So that's technically not the utmost priority. What's a priority for a free agent to be? I think it's Laken Tomlinson. Outside of quarterback, offensive line, the most important position group on a football team, especially when you might have a second-year inexperienced quarterback at that position. If you have a bad offensive line, not only does the quarterback get hit, opens himself up for injuries, can't establish the ground game, that really just lends itself to just having a disastrous season. I'd go Laken Tomlinson as the priority. Let me switch over to YouTube. Aaron Smith. Chase, you man, you're doing a fantastic job covering the Niners. Thank you, my brother. How active do you think the Niners will be in free agency? I think they're going to be active. Now, do I think they're going to sign J.C. Jackson $20 million per year? No, because right now they're financially handcuffed, but I do expect them to round out the roster with some pretty solid to middle tier players. I expect them to retain some of their own free agents like a Laken Tomlinson, maybe Arden Key, maybe DJ Jones, maybe Jaquiski Tart. Would it shock me if they're aggressive? No. In making a trade or trying to bring in a J.C. Jackson wouldn't surprise me because the Niners always make some splashes, but I do expect them to be busy. Aiza plays. Hey, Chase, if you could bring back one retired Niner legend to play on the current squad, who would you choose? Now, these guys would have to be able to play at least a game, right? We can't talk about Ronnie Lott or Joe Montana because they just would break down physically, and I don't want them to get hurt. Current players who could play, or former players who could play currently, I should say. I think Frank Gore, short yardage situation, can pick up a yard and score a touchdown on a 3rd and 1. Honestly, Terrell Owens is in fantastic shape. I mean, he's cut, he's ripped. He said in the last calendar year that he's worked out with the hopes that he can help an NFL team. I think for one game, you put him in the slot, match him up with a slow linebacker, I think he could catch some balls. So let me go Terrell Owens and Frank Gore on that. Always Guapo. Is water wet? According to my sources, water is in fact wet. Appreciate all of those questions on Twitter as well as on YouTube. Those are the latest 49ers news and rumors as well. Make sure you hit that red subscribe button. Our coverage this upcoming week is going to be incredible. I hope all of you hop on board and you enjoy it as much as I will. Have a great weekend. Hit that red sub button, and thanks for watching today's show.